Everyone please vote. There are none, so it's very fast.
That means you didn't switch meetings. How do you want to vote? Yeah? You want to vote yay? Unanimous.
And that passes unanimously. Next is the consideration of adoption of the Community Eligibility Provision Program, what we call CEP. Ms. Hart?
Thank you very much. Before we begin our presentation, I'd like to introduce Miss Sophia Owens. Sophia has been working as an intern with Miss Lalaine for the past month. She is from Louisiana Tech, and she will be graduating May 24th as a registered diagnostician. And she said she would love to come back and volunteer because we were her favorite system that she's been in, so. Okay. Baptism by fire. So tonight for our presentation, we had brought this to you last year in June, and you had requested we do it a little earlier to give it you all time to decide if this is something that you want to participate in. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Lalaine, and she will give you a brief presentation, and then have she'll answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Martin, Superintendent Jabbia, Board. I come before you with the data that was requested to make the best decision possible in the adoption of CEP for next school year. After some comparison data and the April population data that comes from the state, we found that there's been a change in the identified student percentage, and that has dropped from 40.41 to the 38.67 you see to the right. And the comparison cost, and again, that's a projection, will be $2.5 million for next school year. Before we give the proposed pricing for next school year, if this isn't adopted, I just did a comparison year over year. From 1819 and 1920 were the last 2 school years that we had families pay at the free, reduced, or full paid rate where we were collecting applications. So the families have been, able to have the free meals since the 2020 school year with COVID. Then there was additional funding in 21, 22, 22, 23 through COVID, and then 23, 24, and 24, 25 were the CEP years. So that's why all of those numbers are 0. Oops. Sorry, this is the first time I had to do this with you guys. And just for informational purposes, if we were to go back to traditional claiming, there would be applications that would need to be collected again, and that process would be streamlined through online portal that already exists because we were doing that pre-COVID, and we would just have to reenact that website, and we would have to work with IT to be able to do that. And that really provides a better, more efficient process than collecting paper applications. The proposed pricing for next school year for breakfast would be $1.25 for families that did not qualify for free or reduced. And the reduced pricing cannot change because that's a USDA guideline. It has to be 30 cents for breakfast. It can be no more. For lunch, it would be $1.75 for K through 6 and $2 for 7 through 12. And again, the reduced pricing is set by the USDA, and that would be 40 cents. And the increase would be 50 cents for breakfast from the last time that we charged for meals, and for lunch would be 45 cents. And we discussed that to make sure that it was a more even number. That's why it's only 45 cents and not the 50 cents. And we would reenact the meals encouraged through My Payments Plus. However, we would still have to be able to accept cash because that's also a USDA guideline that we cannot create meal barriers by only having cashless payments. And that's it. That concludes my proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lilling. Do I have a motion to bring this to the floor? Ms. Fauntleroy, do I have a second? Ms. Baker? Do I have any public comments?
I don't think so.
Board questions?
Oh, gosh, there's a queue.
All right. Ms. Gallagher?
No, Mr. Kuzan.
Ooh,
Down there speaking.
Mr. Kuzan.
Last year, the increase was $1 million. We had to, in order, the board had to pay $1 million for everybody to eat free, right?
So it was 1.6 million.
1.6 million?
Yes,
And
sir.
it's 2 million this year?
So it would be 2.5 million because that,
So-
that ISP dropped. And so that means we are getting less reimbursement at the free level, which is the higher level, and more at the paid level, which is a much lower level. It's only like 53 cents a meal,
So we're looking at a difference of $900,000.
approximately. Yes, sir.
I thought we've been very successful in the last 4 years, and I would hope that we would be able to find the $900,000 to keep keep the program like it is. I think it's good that we could offer it to everybody. And I thought that in the past few years it's been very, very successful, and I would hope that this board would be able to find the $900,000 to keep us from losing the monies that we get from the federal government on this, okay? But also, I just to think would be better if we could find the $900,000 somewhere, because this is very important to me. I feel that there are a lot of students who we don't really realize that really need this. And some of us may say, well, that's the kid, that student, that parent, those parents are very well off of this, that. But a lot of times we don't know what's going on, and that's why I would like to see if we could continue to offer it to all the students, okay? Thank you.
Ms. Gallagher?
So the ISP, explain to me what that is.
So that is the identified student population, and that means any families that receive free, SNAP, TANF, or Medicaid-free benefits. That data is pulled into the state and populated through April 15th, and that's where that lower percentage came from. So what that means is last year over this year, there's less families that are on assistance and less, a lower percentage because of that.
And it's going to cost us more
Correct.
because we get more money from the people on the SNAP benefits or what have you.
Correct.
Than that.
Correct.
Okay. As far as the application process, there is going to be a paper option, or is it only going to be online?
So Superintendent Jabby and I discussed that, and we would make a certain amount of paper available because we don't want to create any additional barriers for getting that form filled out, because we know sometimes it's just the case that the form needs to be filled out, the family does actually qualify.
Right.
We also talked about some other options for getting families access to computers at school, opening events like meet and greets and things like that, to be able to facilitate any barriers that online application may cause.
Can students, and Louis, you might be able to help, can they access this like on their Chromebook?
Yes, it's just a web interface. The portal already exists.
Okay, so that even if they do have access, okay.
Potentially.
And my only other question is, what is the difference in 25 cents between K through 6 and 7 through 12?
There's usually more lunch choices for
Okay.
those students, and so those are some higher cost options, like how our high schoolers get a third express line and 3 days a week that is Domino's. So it's just just to account for some higher cost items that are used in those junior highs and high schools.
So we get Domino's pizza? How did I not know that? I thought everything had to like come from internally. I didn't
So-
know it came from external, like
So
that.
Domino's offers a program called Smart Slice, and it meets all of the government requirements. And we offer that to the high schoolers on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And Domino's delivers to our high schools, and a vegetable or fruit component is added to that piece of pizza, and it becomes a reimbursable meal that we get funding for.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Peterson?
Yes, ma'am. I got a couple of curiosity question, and
Sure.
and I have a note on my mind here. Does the federal government used to require, and maybe they still do, that you measure and weigh all the food that is served, or
Yes.
count the meals?
Yes.
And that if you had food left over, that it had to be discarded? You couldn't put it in your coolers and use it, or couldn't feed it to the kids? You had to
So-
get rid of it if it wasn't paid for?
It depends on what it is. You know, like say, let's just use like macaroni and cheese to go with the chicken tenders on a Monday. If there's, you know, a half a pan left of it and it's been sitting in the warmer and it's not gonna reheat well, yes, we're gonna throw
gotta
it
go.
away.
But if you had-
But if it's
right.
something that we can use and, you know, offer as a leftover to the kids the next day, they like macaroni and cheese, so
I
we're
just-
gonna
I'm
do
just
that. We're not
kidding.
gonna throw it
Okay.
away.
I guess and it's not, I understand about the safety and security. I
Yeah.
guess the reason I was asking that, because I think it's probably not uncommon to have food thrown away,
Correct.
but you got kids that are hungry in schools.
Yes.
And that, I don't understand that. And I don't know how you can compensate for that, if we could at all. But, the other thing was, you know, we're talking about, and then Mr. Kuzan mentioned, you know, food for kids. Pearl River High School, Principal Jordan, she's engaged with a community program with the local churches, and they send kids home with food on Fridays at the school as an outreach program through their school to help the community. And what I don't understand is, you know, we're talking about finding money. We got people trying to donate stuff because everybody knows that there are hungry people in the communities. And so we know it too. So when we make this decision or on any of this, we're doing it knowing there are hungry people. And as far back as I can remember as a principal, all the 13 years that I was at North Shore, there was not a year that went by we didn't stumble over children in high schools that just weren't eating. And then you'd find out that their parents aren't going to fill out a piece of paper, even if that's all it takes. And these kids come to school and they just isolate themselves, and they don't go to the cafeteria. They don't eat the food because they can't buy it. And when you find, you know, you take them to the cafeteria and say, look, can we find some food? I'm going to pay for this youngster's lunch. Let's take care of that. But so I don't know. You know, it's a lot of money, but it's only money. And I don't know of a taxpayer in St. Tammany that would say don't feed the kids. So I'm with Mr. Kuzan on that. I think that's something we need to do. And you know, if parents can come up and validate that they don't need it, that's what they should do. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a good answer to this at all.
So to your point with the food waste, we have all these regulations with sodium and calories and sugars that can be added to any of the foods. And there's only, you know, we can only give them whole grain rice or a whole grain roll. Like, we have all of these, you know, restrictions. So it's a balancing act to find things like Domino's Pizza that offer something to these students that they're actually going to eat and still fall within the guidelines that the USDA gives us.
Yeah,
And we have, as a staff, kind of addressed some of those things for next year with the menu, and found some items and done the student taste testings in the schools that hopefully will address some of that
Well,
waste.
and I know the solution to the problem that we're talking about really isn't in those leftovers. It really is not. It's in what do we have to do to take care of our kids? That's what this question ought to be. What do we have to do to take care of our kids? Because it's not going to get done by anybody else. And so, anyway, St. Tammany's always done what's right by the kids. All right, thank you.
Ms. Fauntleroy?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I just want to to clarify. So if we continue the way we did last year, funding this program, it will be a $2.5 million hit to our budget. If we go back to applications and people who are in need fill out an application, if they qualify, their lunch is free or reduced, and our impact to our budget is zero or minimal.
It's minimal because the proposed pricing doesn't take on the whole account, we get $4 and something cents a student who is free. We
Right.
get $4 and a little bit less for a student
Right.
that's reduced, but like I said, with the student that's paid, we only get 53 cents. So we can't charge more than that free reimbursement rate that the USDA gives us. Basically, what we've looked at with our historical data was that the district takes on about half of what it would cost to feed the paid student, and the families take on the other half.
Do you
So
have
that's where that $2 comes
Any idea if we go back, well, let me ask you this. If we go back to applications,
Mm-hmm.
what's the cutoff? Like, do you know what the criteria is for
Yes.
kids?
Yeah, that's about the only data, besides this population data that's available. It's a income eligibility chart. And for comparison, I pulled 18, 19 over the new ones for 25, 26. And I don't have all of it memorized, but what I told Ms. Jabia and Ms. Hart when we were speaking about it is, I know for sure a family of 4.
Okay,
The income level used to be $32,800 to qualify for free lunch in 2018, 2019. Now that approximate same amount, it's about $32,600, only qualifies the parents for reduced. And that's an income eligibility chart. I have it, and I can
We do.
email it to you guys so you could see that, where the families would fall as far as qualifying for the free and reduced.
okay, that doesn't make sense to me. Prices have gone up. It seems like the level to qualify
Yeah.
would have gone up. It didn't.
So it did, it's kind of skewed.
Okay.
It really is, but that's a government
So a
chart
family of
that-
4 if they make 30-something, that's both incomes?
Mm-hmm.
If their total income has to be less than 32,000-ish?
Yes.
For the kid to qualify?
For reduced,
For reduced?
yes.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
And I can forward that to the board, to Christie, so that she can forward it to the board for your reference.
Okay,
But yes, it's an income eligibility chart.
all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Baker?
Yes, thank you. This is my frustration on this, is that we have a budget, and I know that at some point, real soon, y'all are gonna come at us with teacher raises, as it should be, because we have to retain our teachers, and they deserve a raise, and we're not gonna get any help from the state, from what I understand. So, Ms. Prevost, can you tell me how this is going to, what other, like, big items are gonna hit us, and how we're going to manage to stay, because I think everybody, it makes sense to everybody to just feed everybody lunch. But at the same time, we have to, if you can pay, but 32,000 is, I'm shocked
It's
at
more
that.
than that, so I need to
Okay, can you
explain.
just talk to us?
Okay, there's more than just the 877,952. As I've told you last year, food service is operated at a negative. We've always funded it. So we are a district that gives food service a lot of money so we can have a premier food program for our kids. Okay, so last year we had the 1.6. We've been writing off the fund balance of food service. It will be gone after this year. So not only are you going to have an increase of 877,952, but you're going to have to fund fully any raises we give. So we're going to have, general fund's going to have to give food service the money for any raises. I'm not going to talk about that dollar, but it's It's a big dollar. And then also the fund balance is gone, so we're looking at having to add another 2 million possibly. So right now we're funding for 25, 9.7 million out of general fund. So we're looking at 13.4 million possibly. So there's more to consider than just this. Money's gonna have to come out of general fund to keep the program operating as it is. And then you're talking about another 877 on top. So, and we're expecting this program to continue to, it's gonna get more expensive. I mean, that's just what we're thinking. I would love to pay the kids, but it's a lot of money. It's not just the 877, because we're funding other things, and every time we give a raise, general fund has got to fund that, because food service does not have the money. Because we have a high labor ratio in food service. So we pay all the salaries and benefits basically in food service, because the cost of the revenue coming in does not cover that. Now, she's done a fantastic job cutting, but we're still gonna be in the red, most likely. I projected it out today. So now you're adding another 877, any raise adds in, and then when fund balance is gone, that's another 2 million we may have to add. So like, I'm projecting maybe we might have to fund at 13.4 million next year. So that's 3.7 million with this cost. So it's a significant dollar. That's a major impact on general fund.
And that'll put us in the red for sure.
Well, we're in the red, but we're getting closer to being balanced, but the more we add, and I just anticipate this program we're gonna eventually have to go back to the way we were in 2019. We're just delaying the inevitable and just adding more and more costs to our general fund.
We were just not expecting our percentage to drop.
Yeah, if the percentage wouldn't have dropped.
And when the percentage dropped, unfortunately, that means we get less funding, which means the only way to keep this afloat is for the board to kick in basically $900,000 just to maintain the program.
As it is, without free.
Basically just the program, not school foods, the program. Yeah, so, and we've got to treat our school food service just like we do all our support personnel. So if we can't deny raises, we can't, I mean, those people, they deserve a raise as much, if not more than anyone else. So, and Casey, as Terry spoke about, Casey's done a great job. I'm not gonna get into personnel, but she has taken a deep dive and done major cuts in the kitchen to try to cut back, so that we were hoping to be able to, our percentage would be, and we would be able to bring to you guys a complete program with not much of an increase, but unfortunately, we don't control the numbers. The state provides those numbers for us, so.
Okay, so, wow. My next question is, so any child that goes into a university, it doesn't matter if you're as wealthy as the Rockefellers or as poor can be. When you go to a university, if it's still the same, you have to fill out a FAFSA form, right? So is there any way, this is my first question, that all students, and this might not even be legal, I don't know, could fill this, would be required to fill this out? And then, because some families wouldn't know if they would qualify or not qualify. You know what I'm saying? Like, is there any way that it can be a broad, everybody apply and just see what happens?
That is an option. But we can't force them to fill the form out. The income eligibility chart that I was referencing can be made more readily available, so the families would see, if we make $40,000, we would potentially qualify for this. If we make this much, we would potentially qualify for that. That income eligibility could be made more public than it is right now, if that's kind of what you're asking. But we can't force them to fill the form out, and there's no variable rate for funding. It's either free, reduced, or full paid.
I mean, I can't imagine, just like in the earlier video, like the lady in the cafeteria said, feeding the brain is what you're essentially doing, and that is absolutely crucial. And but at the same time, if we run out of money with that, we can't feed it. Right. So, all right, I'm trying to process. That's it for now. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Just a couple questions. I'm not quite sure what we're voting on here. So the consideration is for adoption of the CE program. So if we vote yes, then we're voting for the status quo. If we vote no, we're voting to go back to the old way. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. And this is a question for Mr. Bro that he would ask. So he's not with us tonight, but if you're watching at home, Mr. Bro, this is for you, pal. So the 2.5 million that we get, our contribution to the CEP program would be 2.5 million for the 25-26 school year. What do we get in return from the federal government for that? So is it $10 million? Is it?
Are you talking about the reimbursement
The
that maybe we would
reimbursement
get for
on
the
on
year?
the CEP program. So if we're investing 2.5 million in the program, what is the Fed's investment in that program?
So for last year, it was 14.9 million.
Okay. So
This
just,
year, we're projected to be around 14.8.
okay. And if we go back to the way it was, where we're receiving federal dollars, USDA dollars for the free and reduced, and we no longer have that 2.5, then what is the Fed reimbursement on that piece?
So what happens with CEP is that reduced reimbursement goes away. You only get reimbursed at the free and the paid. So that's where the deficit comes in, because you're no longer gathering that population data to say, okay, this kid will qualify for reduced, so we're going to give you X amount. That goes away, and so you automatically default to the lower rate, and that's what's happened this year. Is our percentage is lower. That means that we don't get as much of the free, and we get more of the paid rate, which is much lower.
Okay.
Did that answer what you were asking?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's kind of why I'm torn a little bit. I understand the importance of feeding all these kids. My challenge is that 2.5 million, if we're not funding that, essentially the people that are paying taxes they're paying for those kids to have lunch.
Yes.
It's kind of a circular reference for me. But another thing just to be mindful, for the board to be mindful of, is that, again, I know we have the budget issues, but the 2.5 million is getting us close to 15 million back in return from the federal government. It's kind of like their share of that pie to participate in this program.
It is, but as Ms. Prevost mentioned, that doesn't account for any salaries that we have to pay.
Right.
Basically, that reimbursement that we're getting from the government pays for the program, but not the labor to move the program.
So presumably the 2.5 million would go toward just back to the food service fund,
The operation.
the operations,
Yes.
to be able to fund salaries for
yes.
the food service workers.
I will project for 26, that we will be operating in the red with no general fund by 13.4 million.
Okay.
So, and that's a lot of money compared to other districts. We're higher than anybody because we have a premier. Everybody else is cut back. Their programs aren't near as good as ours. So we've always done that. So we're funding a lot more than that, and that just adds on top of it, and it's just gonna continue to get bigger.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that we have these committee meetings because it does give us some time to consider this before we go to board vote. So, and hear back from constituents and get their feedback. So, thank you.
Other districts do it. I'm sorry.
Ms. Moore?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for making the cuts. I know that it's been difficult. I, for one, and I look at the bottom line, what we're paying, but knowing that a lot of these kids would not eat, or the school's going to pay the difference at the end of the school year because they haven't paid the bill, and I was there, and no matter what you do, the cafeteria's got to feed a kid no matter what. And usually it's a piece of something on bread, And it's so embarrassing. A lot of parents won't fill out the paperwork. Now, you might think they do, but I've had to call parents and ask them, knowing their situation changed, to please fill out the reduced or free lunch form. Paperwork is it less because they don't have to go through all of the free and reduced lunch forms? So that saves some.
It does a little bit, but like I said, the online portal really kind of streamlined that and made it more efficient.
Okay. In my heart, I know that these kids need this. It's very difficult hearing the money situation, but I know it takes a lot of burden off a lot of families. They might not be at poverty level, but they're just making it. And, you know, we had our taxes go up last year, a few other things. The parents and all of our community has given us the vote this last Saturday, which is, we want to continue to have their trust in what they're doing. Anyway, I appreciate also the student advisory to find out what they eat, because it kills me when I see the food being thrown away. So to know what they really want to eat, I applaud you for that.
I just hope my crystal ball is working, Ms. Moore.
I'm sure it is. And we can encourage them to eat. But these kids, and I applaud what Mr. Said about Pearl River. I used to feed kids, send them home with a bag of something they could eat during the weekend, because a lot of them, there's nothing. They get a box of chicken on Friday night, and that's supposed to last them for the whole weekend. So,
And I will
anyway.
tell you, we don't deny any students at the elementary schools meals. They will get a free meal.
A full meal.
A full meal, excuse me, and it will just, the balance will just go onto the account. And that's what you're referencing with the accounts at the end of the year that the schools have to reconcile. But the students don't get just a piece of bread. They would get a full meal at the elementary levels. And
Mr. Kuzan?
This has come up before. And the last time it came up, I think we had to pay $1 million or something like that. But one of my constituents came up face to face with me and said, you can pay $11 million, put turfs on all these fields, but you can't feed the kids. That's what he told me. And I want to tell it to everybody here tonight. You can't feed the kids, but we can do everything else, but we can't feed the kids. We can find money to pay the salaries for everybody that worked on the field and do everything else. But we can't find the money to pay the cooks in the lunchroom or to feed the kids. I'm sorry, I feel different about this.
Ms. Hurstis, since you haven't spoken yet?
And I get what you're saying, Mr. Kuzan, and I want all the children to eat, trust me, because I got a plan in my head about food. You know, always got a plan in my head. It's always thinking. Might not be thinking correctly, but it's always thinking. But I'm going to ask Gia's question for you. What are other districts doing? Do we know?
yeah, we had, yeah,
Oh.
Ms. Hart.
The districts that around us that are doing CEP next year are Tangi, Livingston, St. Bernard, St. Charles, and Washington. They are, Mr. Alfonso called his contacts, and they are doing CEP next year.
Okay, so they're doing this, but all the other ones, everybody's paying their own?
These are the only ones he called, there's the
Oh,
neighboring.
okay,
right,
okay, so we
neighboring
don't know, like
parishes.
with Jefferson, if the parents are
These are
paying?
the ones
those-
that he
okay,
got.
okay. So, my question was, so the cost of the lunch, if we had parents paying their own lunch, this is for you, Ms. Prevost, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it. So if they were paying their own lunch, and then we had, you know, the other ones filling out the application and stuff like that. So does that cost cover payroll and everything, or is that just paying for lunch?
It didn't, but it was closer than we are now. last year when we talked about this, the 1.6, I mean, we were hoping they would raise the amount they pay. That was hopeful. Of course, that didn't happen. What I'm concerned is where the federal government is going on cuts, that, we're going to end up even more cuts. So we just get deeper and deeper in the hole with this. I mean, we've been we had a significant fund balance from years back, but as we've done large raises, the year we did 4 years of $1,000, that's when we started seeing it decline. And that fund balance will be gone at the end of this year. So that means we have to fund even more. They will be able to cover their own cost somewhat, but I mean, we're looking at probably 13.4 million that we'll have to fund next year. Right now, it's 9.7. So that's an increase of 3.7 million. That would be roughing out a raise. So
But-
that's a big increase. So that's all going to come out of general fund.
Okay, right, but if we were to not do this and they were to pay for their own lunches, what would it still cost us out of the budget?
I mean, that should save about $1 million, I'm guessing.
So when in 1819, if I looked at the contributions for, collecting money from the families, it was around like 2.3 million.
Okay, so it's still gonna cost us money. So what's the difference of us costing 3.7 and 2 point something?
No, I think you're saying we would have.
With just
2
the,
million more.
yeah,
Yeah.
more.
So you're talking about $1 million funding versus 3.7 million.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And the questions asked about CEP with other districts, the issue is like Washington has a higher percentage, so they get more reimbursement. If the higher that percentage, so I don't know, Steve called around and said who would be participating, those are the ones due, but if they get a higher percentage, of course, they get more reimbursement. So unfortunately, we have fewer students that qualified and unfortunately cut the funding that we would receive from the government. So the board would have to kick in that extra funding to make that up, unfortunately.
Ms. Gallagher? Sure, 1 second, Mr. Harrell, please.
IDA came through, a lot of our families qualified for DSNAP, which pushed that percentage up, and that is rolling off. That's why the percentage is coming back down. That storm helped us qualify.
Mr. Harrell?
Thank you, Chairperson, Ms. Martin.
Person.
If, so a vote yay would move this forward to the board meeting, a vote no would just kill it immediately and we wouldn't have this discussion next week at all. So we're not really voting against the CEP this week. It's just not moving forward and we're not doing anything.
We have to have a decision.
I know, but there'd be no further discussion if we vote no. Right now, we're just moving it forward. I just want to remind everybody, we're not really voting for or against CEP. We're just moving it forward to the board meeting. That's all I had to say.
If I could just say too, my esteemed colleague right here looked it up and Jefferson is participating.
Ms. Gallagher?
So now I have a question for Mr. Harrell before I go back there. So it's on the agenda, so if we vote no, this wouldn't carry over to the consent agenda next week? It's an agenda item.
I would think that it would, y'all. We are currently participating in CEP. And it needs to go to the full board to say no. In this instance, we're already doing it. So you're saying that we're not gonna do it. We would need to bring that to the full board. Or, yes, we want to continue it, we need to bring that to the full. I think whatever your decision tonight, it's gonna need to come to the full board because it would be a change, one way or the other, it's a change to what we're currently doing. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because of where we are. We're currently under CEP right now. So if we change that, that needs to be done in front of the full board next Thursday.
Go ahead, Mr. Harrell, if you got something to say.
I think the problem is this board bounces back and forth between what moves forward and what doesn't. The purpose of the committee meeting is to move stuff forward to the board meeting. So we're really not approving this program, we're approving moving it forward to the board meeting.
Mr. Harrison's not agreeing
One
with
item,
you.
we might do that, and then the next we don't.
Okay, I would like to interject, please. So That is true for this particular case because we're currently doing it and it has to go to the full board. But in general, it is absolutely okay to vote down an agenda item at a committee meeting because the board agrees as a whole that that particular agenda item should not move to the board meeting, correct? Because that has been done in the past. And then we do not see it at the board meeting.
I think you're correct, but there hasn't been a lot of consistency on that. The historic way of dealing with it was there were discussions in the committee on a whole, and you did it again in a board meeting with less discussion, just voted on it. So a lot of times it depends on how it's advertised and how you vote. I can't give you like a answer for every scenario. Just for this one in particular, I see both sides of it. Once you create confusion, my always solution is to make very clear what you're doing. And I think the superintendent explained it very well.
Okay. I should have asked that last, sorry. So from the last time that we had school lunches paid for, do you have the numbers on how many kids were free and how many were reduced? Like to know like how many, sorry.
So much for you, and I didn't bring that with me.
I'm sorry.
I was not anticipating that one.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, you know,
But I can get that to you.
I might stump you on this one too, because you may or may not know the answer to this. Do you know like the average or the total number that we have that schools are paying at the end of the year?
Yes, I did pull
look at
that.
you. Look at there.
So the, when in 1920, when we had to, close out the end of the year because of school closures, it was approximately 62,000.
Okay,
And then it
that's
was.
across all 55 schools.
Correct. And that
Right,
comes out of the
so-
school's budget.
Roughly $1,500 a school if we had to go an average.
We
It's
did,
heavier weighted at some schools.
Right.
Yeah.
we did get a lot of donations on that, but I
Correct.
personally don't think schools should be responsible, but that's just my opinion. But 62,000 is a lot cheaper than 878,000.
So, and I see your point on the whole, because of the IDA or whatever. But it's only, I say only, that's still a lot of people, but 38% of our population are the ones who are on SNAP. There's still 60, if I do the math right, 62% that are eligible and can pay. Now, there's probably some borderline people, I'm guessing, that may or may not, and the schools might have to,
They could fill out an application and potentially qualify.
right.
Yes.
And then, Ms. Prios, can you explain to me fund balance? Feel like I'm not understanding this, because at the end of the year, like, we are supposed to have a fund balance to balance. So is that the fund balance you keep saying we keep taking from?
Yes, school food service had a fund balance built up from years ago. So as they've had deficits, they've been able to cover their own deficits.
Okay.
Of course, we have continued to increase their funding because the deal we had with food service when I first came was any salary increases, any benefit increases, general fund funded them. So of course, it's gone up over time. So last year, our funding was 9.7 million into food service. So that's how much they needed to balance. But they had 2 million carrying over that was left of their fund balance that was going to cover that much of the deficit. So the 2 million will be gone. So now, if we were funding them 9.7 million when they were going to cover their own 2 million, that adds another 2 million to the 9.7 that we have to fund, plus any raises and benefit increases. So I'm projecting 13.4 million we'd have to fund out of general fund.
Okay, and so when we do raises, I know there's teacher raises and there's everybody else raises.
Yes.
Food service is not included in all those other raises.
No, they're included. They have to,
But
by
they're just-
contract, they get the same.
But that's not coming out of general fund, that's coming out of their own budget?
Well,
That's what I'm not understanding what you're saying here.
Food service operations should be what they call an enterprise fund, meaning it should be like a business. It should break even.
Okay,
Ours doesn't, and it hasn't. So the school board made a decision a long time ago to fund it so that we had a premier program much
Okay.
better than most school districts. So our funding at the current time has gone up more and more and more, 9.7 last year, and it will go up more next year.
okay,
Regardless if we're in CEP or not, we're gonna have to add some money to it,
okay,
just for the raises, if there are any.
okay, thank you.
Dr. Peterson?
Okay. All right. If we had accurate information and everyone filled the forms out completely and properly, and you had all those forms in front of you, would we have this problem we're talking about? Missing kids, not having the food, not being able to feed them? Lunches.
I guess maybe I'm not, I'm gonna feed a kid if he's standing in front of me.
I know what I'm saying is if we don't have the information, or we say like, we're not gonna pay for this.
Uh-huh.
All right, that equates to people not eating, correct?
The kids would still get fed.
still have to
I mean, tell a lady that's
Elementary
feeding
school,
them.
right, you got that.
Then the high school kids would get offered an alternate meal.
And I explained about a food
Which
program
is-
that involves the churches in one of our high schools that actually has to send food home with kids in
Yes.
high school. So it's there, they're having issues there too.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my concern is this, what would make this, how could we resolve that? Is it just pay the money, or is it complete the forms? And then we get the people who actually need the food, we get the food to them.
It might be that there's a deficit in the forms being
Okay,
filled
so
out.
if we- so
It
what-
may
yeah.
be, not in all cases, but it may be that we need to encourage more forms to be filled out.
Okay, we have to find a better way to get people to do their part, to get us the paperwork so we can feed their kids. That's right?
In some
So
cases.
we should be able to
some
do that. We're
cases.
pretty smart folks. We need to find a way that we get that done, and then we don't have the big money discussion. We have, get the forms and find those kids, and let's make sure we get meals to them. So my thing is this, a better accountability system for filling out those forms. Maybe you don't get your, I don't know, you don't get your little laptop or your computer because you didn't fill out the form. You'll be able to go to class when you get the form filled out. So I don't know. Yeah, they might never do that. Yeah, being facetious about it, funny about it, but here's the thing though. I think it's incumbent upon the professionals in this room that represent the school system to give us a better way to deal with this, because it sounds like we've got a mechanical problem that could leave kids unfed because we decided, okay, we're saving money. So I don't want to be convicted of saving money because we hadn't looked hard enough for a way to get the forms in and get this thing done expertly. So if we can do that, and I would vote for us to postpone a decision until we come back with some more strategy to reach more kids and get these forms filled out.
So I will tell you, this is a national problem. Any of the school
It is, but you
nutrition
know what, we
information that we make,
Right.
that's a barrier to
Right.
getting these forms completed. It's a national problem.
Right, and I'm
We
I'm
have-
not saying this is, I'm not directing this
I
energy
understand.
towards you, okay?
Thank you.
This energy is for just doing the right thing.
So
That's all.
I will tell you, that as I kind of mentioned before, we discussed, making some computers available at meet and greets and encouraging it at that time, making computers available at open houses, any school events that we have, reminding those parents to go and fill that form out, and
Yeah.
that they can do it while they're,
See, and I know there are gonna be some things, I'm just give you one example, would make it very difficult. Kid in high school, hardly ever ate, found him somehow, ends up in my office talking to me, and because he's hearing voices and stuff, and he's so malnourished, and he's a high school kid. Anyway, found out that his mother never bought food. The refrigerator was full of alcohol, and all he would have was coffee for breakfast, coffee for supper, and he got to the point where he's hearing voices, talking about feeding the mind, and so he had to get a lot of help on several levels because of the condition he got into by not eating. And I don't know where, I don't know how you get to those folks, but we're going to go knock on people's doors because they're truant. Maybe we ought to knock on people's doors just to get an idea of how they're doing. And I don't know how you do that. Now maybe other people can suggest that we look into different things. I don't know, but I just think there's a better way to do this than, if we can't figure out the way, maybe we ought to pay the money. Maybe we ought to pay the money because it's good for kids. And if we can't pay the money, let's find a better way to get it done. But I don't think we have to do anything right this moment until we get a better idea. Thank you.
Ms. Baker?
I just, we live in a very generous community. What I would love to see is, since our school system is a nonprofit, why we don't have a donate now button on our website that anyone could just donate, and we say that's for food services. I think we have people in this community that would do that. But I just want to be clear that no matter how this vote goes, and I'm more inclined with Dr. Peterson, at least give us a week to collect some information and do the hard vote next week. But I want to be clear that no matter which way this vote goes, if a child comes through a lunch line to get a lunch, they're getting a lunch. No matter if they don't have any money on their card, or they're free or reduced or whatever, that somehow, some way, because I know oftentimes a PTA in some of our bigger schools will pick up that tab. And then there are other community outreach programs that would pick up the tab. I mean, we don't ever want to be in the business of not feeding a child.
No, ma'am.
Whether you forgot your lunch or you forgot your whatever, and, I mean, you got to get through the rest of the day. We want to feed you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to be clear that no matter which way this goes, that we're going to feed children, no matter what.
That's correct.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
referring to historically what was done. If I get direction otherwise with the high schools, then I'll give that direction to my staff. But historically, what was done was that the students in the elementary schools were not denied, and you just, marked that meal and it charged and it accrued. At the high schools, they were offered an alternate meal, which was basically, whatever was on the salad bar, fruit, vegetables, bread, they got something. They just didn't get the full meal. This is, again, historical parts of what I inherited. However, if I get direction otherwise, then I'll move forward and give direction to my staff.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fauntleroy.
Thank you. Real quickly, Ms. Prevost, a couple of times you said that our district has chosen to offer a premier program, and that other districts are not operating at this great of a deficit because they don't. What do you mean by that?
They don't
Premier
fund it like we do.
I know. So what is the difference in what those children are getting versus what our children are getting?
I haven't delved into their programs, but I looked at every large district and I compared. And for example, MFP, we're required to give food service a certain amount. The state tells us the dollar. That dollar is $150,000. We give it $5.3 million. So that gives you an idea. And most school districts just use the dollar that the state
And so
says
what do
It's
they
sa-
do?
It's salary.
It's our
It's
salaries.
salary.
isn't it?
It's
She can
salary.
speak to it.
Yeah, it is salary, but a portion of it is also, in other districts, they might have one kitchen that they cook at, and they
Oh, and
satellite
distribute.
the meals
Okay.
over. That, to me, provides some food safety issues, some insurance issues, because we would have
Right.
to buy vehicles to
But are you
transfer
saying
that
that
food.
their cafeteria staff, people don't get raises, Mr. Jabby, at the same rate, or?
They're just underpaid. If you go look at the job, like, look at next door to us, pull it up, Washington and Tangipahoa, those people make about $4,000 less.
Okay, than
in the
our
cafeteria
people.
Than our cafeteria does. And that's the difference, is staffing. And like Kate said, in Tangi, they transport a lot of meals.
Okay.
So they have one kitchen that cooks, and they may service 5 or 6 schools from that one kitchen.
Right.
And then again, that's food safety. Now you're transporting food, and then it's just a mess. And, that our system, we set it up a long time ago to where we'd have individual kitchens serving
Right.
those individual schools. Yes.
And I guess when you have that central kitchen, you have a lot less staff.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you.
You up?
One more thing.
Dr. Peterson.
Yes. I'd just like to ask Paul, is this something we can table? Because I mean, like, I'm saying until we get maybe an alternative idea or suggestion?
I think that's always a valid motion in a public meeting. You can always table something, but I was actually talking to Mr. Davis about this particular item. So I'll try to very clearly articulate my thoughts because I know it was confusing last time. Look, you're talking about a CEP program where if you asked me as a member of the public where you would kill the program or vote on it, it'd be in a board meeting, which what the superintendent was saying. So a vote for this puts it on the board's agenda. A vote against it tonight, I'd still recommend putting it on the board agenda. Okay, for this item. Now, the past has been confusing to me because sometimes the scenario of voting against it in a committee meeting and putting on an agenda meeting, I can't remember that happening. But it could happen and the vote could flip. Because I view this meeting as a full discussion of an item. Now, when you vote for it, say unanimously in a committee, then it makes a consent agenda where it could fall off the consent agenda if someone changes their mind by simply saying, I'm no longer going to vote in favor of that. I want it pulled off the consent agenda. So those are my scenarios that I'm thinking of. So for this evening, if you table it, you'd have to want to say not for the next board meeting either, right? Because otherwise, that doesn't make any sense. So if you make a motion to table it, you'd probably want to set a particular board meeting for it to come back up on, or another committee if you need more information. A vote for this plan puts it on the agenda next week, and you've got a week to
down
consider it, right? So those are my thoughts.
Can I ask Casey, what is your deadline, Casey?
June 30th. I have to opt in. That's a hard deadline. I have to opt in or opt out of CEP by June 30th. I could not provide data before April 15th because that's when the state populates this ISP percentage that I'm presenting to you tonight.
Okay, since I have the floor here, do we have enough information to say, could you tell me how big that portion of that percentage is of high school kids versus the elementary kids in the cost? Don't know.
No, that data doesn't come through to me specifically. Lewis and his team process that data that comes through us, so I think he was
I
gonna
have the free and reduced counts, historical. I could pull them, I'd have to pull them by.
I just wonder how many kids in high school that we're talking about versus, because we're taking care of all the elementary. If that cost is predominantly elementary, then I'd like to know that versus high schools.
I could provide historical data. I wouldn't know current because we don't have their income levels or anything like that. But I could go back in time for the last time we
18
actually did it.
Yeah.
Because I have all the state reports.
I'd like to, yeah. Now, what do we have to do to wait to get that information?
It's in a folder in my office.
And I think that would kind of meet what Ms. Gallagher was asking as well. I think
Yeah,
you're kind of
we
asking
can, we
the
can
same
shoot all
things.
that to you tomorrow morning. We can get all that to you guys tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, the percentage right now comes from the state, so we don't have any of those datas. It's what the parents and the families qualified for the state. So we didn't provide the application
Right.
for that.
So what we're being asked to vote for this evening is yes or no for the increased amount and go forward, right? The two, was it?
On it next week.
Well, next week, of course. Okay, but it'll be there for an up or down vote to pay the extra money. Okay. And I don't have any qualms with that if we can come up with a solution to make sure we're not leaving kids out of the lines in high school either. Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Ms. Baker?
Two more things. So just to be clear, because I'd like to have the whole big picture, so when will we get presented with proposed raises that the state's going to give us absolutely not a penny for? And then with watching what is going on federally and then even in our state, how they're wanting to change food items, which will potentially be an increase cost of food because they're now going to require fresh and know this and know that. And I get all that. And I think I'm all about healthy kids. But I think we need, in order to make an informed decision, I need a bigger picture of so if this could potentially put us in 13 mil red, is that with or without how we're trying to come up with teacher raises without help? Ms. Priebus?
We have a plan, and we were gonna talk about collective bargaining in executive session tonight, so that you'll be
Okay.
knowing that pretty quickly.
Okay, so we
if
can just
agree.
abstain tonight and vote next week?
Or you can just pass it tonight and it'll come next week.
Okay, so we pass it to,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's coming next week.
even if we all voted no, we would see it next week. Mr. Kuzan.
I just want to say, I think I heard you say that you all would not let any student go without a meal.
That's
And I'd
correct.
like to see not only elementary, junior high, but there are high school students that need meals also.
That could be
And as
something
long
that's-
as you all tell me that you're not gonna let a kid go hungry.
Have you met a lunch lady, Mr. Kuzan? They're not gonna let a child go hungry, I can promise you that.
Now, hey, my goal.
Or
my
a lunch
goal-
lad, sorry, we
My
have a
goal
couple
is
of
to
those.
feed the kids
Yes, sir.
at any cost, but I'm just saying, if you can say, hey, we're gonna feed the kids,
Yes, sir.
that's all that's important to me.
Yes, sir.
Because I see a lot of kids hungry sometimes, and I don't like that. And it's a pet peeve of mine. So as long as you tell me that you're gonna provide the food, provide the kids to eat,
Yes, sir.
they come through that line, you feed them. That's all I'm concerned about.
And Mr. Kuzan, I'll shake your hand in the middle of the street.
I really think we could set up a local fund and we could solicit donations. I think the public would do it. A lot of school districts are doing it. I think it's an idea. And we could fund that. And then when parents, I think our biggest problem is, well, people that don't fill out the paperwork, but it's also parents not paying. So
And we
schools
have-
should
we
not
have
be
irresponsible
responsible
parents, too,
for
and
that. So,
That way you can always have
I
that.
think we got about $10,000 in donations without even trying. The last year we did this for specific schools, and we tracked it, and we applied it to the schools' balances. There were generous donors, so I think if we put it in that respect, because I think these percentages are going to continue to drop in this program. This program's going to fall off anyway. So I think if we get a plan, like you're talking, to try to get as many people signed up that are eligible for free and reduced, and maybe try to get donations to help with the kids, but I think we should we're gonna feed the kids. We're doing it, and personally, I think you should feed high school too, and then we try to solicit donations.
Yeah,
for people that have
If a kid's
issues.
hungry, I want to feed
Yeah,
them. Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay, everyone please vote.
It doesn't matter, it'll be back next week.
no, whatever, it's coming up next.
Ms. McCall? Oh, I'm sorry. Five yeas, 6 nays, 1 abstention.
And we will see that next week at the board meeting. The votes today were 5 yeas, 6 nays, and 1 abstention. Next is the consideration of a new policy regarding children's safety flyers. Ms. Hurstis, would you like to make that motion? Ms. Hurstis,
Would you like to make the motion for the flyers?
do I have a second? Okay. Ms. Gallagher, do I have any, public comments? Okay. And before I take questions from the board, Ms. Hurstis, would you like to go over your flyer, your proposed policy?
No, I hope that the board go ahead and vote for this. This is definitely something this is probably going to be one of a couple of things that I would like to propose. I feel safety, this is internet safety, which I went to Brian's presentation for the internet safety, and if y'all have not gone to that, it was fabulous. This was for the parents. I'm waiting for when high school comes, I'm gonna go to that as well. But it was fabulous. And parents, if you're watching, please go to it when he does it again. It was unbelievable. And I was shocked. I mean, I've been to several presentations, but I was shocked to learn. Every time you go to one of these things, you learn more and more and more. But, so this will be, sex trafficking, this is human trafficking, this is internet safety. There's a lot involved with this flyer. And it's going to go into the bathrooms. I feel, and then, like, kind of randomly in the hallway, and then Paul and I spoke about maybe putting like in the counselor's, office as well. And I feel putting it in there is a place that it's private, where if a child goes into the bathroom, that, they might not want everybody to see that they're getting, taking down a number, or taking down a website. And they're gonna get the information, they're gonna see maybe signs, from another student, and, and then they can reach out to an adult. So anyway, I think this is a start. So I don't know, I'm throwing it out there. The policy says basically what it is, and I really do hope that you guys are on board with this. And again, this is just the start of maybe a few things that I would like to implement with our schools. This, if you don't know, I do have this. I got this information from Thomas over at Hope House. He said, could easily estimate out of 130 children who completed forensic interviews with each child representing an active criminal investigation, that 80 to 82 of the 130 are children enrolled in our school system. That figure is a representative of 1/4. So if a flyer, just a flyer, can help out one child, I think that is worth everything. And I'm not trying to put extra work on anybody. But I would think that doing that to help one, 80 to 82, just in 1/4 in our school system. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Hurstis. Ms. Hart, would you be able to answer some board questions with Ms. Hurstis? Did you help her with this, or?
Ms. Ursus had come to me earlier in the year about making some sort of poster with sex trafficking for students. So I got with Thomas at Hope House to see what they had, if there was something we could put in the hallways at high schools. I was thinking more of a high school level. And what he had given us was not really what we were looking for, so they were gracious enough, Thomas was gracious enough to make a flyer for us. And so that's what I had talked to Michelle about, and then Michelle had said she wanted to put it into a policy. So that's what brings us here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any board comments? Oh, Ms. Baker.
Thank you. And I did do my homework on this, and, Michelle and I often agree on this subject matter. It's just, and I'm not saying no, never. I'm saying no, not right now. And I wrote it up so I could keep my thoughts together. So if y'all just bear with me. Michelle, I appreciate your passion as it relates to sex trafficking. After doing my homework and talking to professionals that deal with this issue on a daily basis, I am not in favor of this policy as it is written. Sex trafficking is horrific. The reality is that all sexual child abuse is horrific and needs to be prevented and responded to appropriately by adults. Under the child abuse umbrella, there are 3 things. 1, sexual abuse. 2, physical abuse. And 3, neglect and child endangerment. Now, under the umbrella of child abuse, and then under the umbrella of sexual child abuse, are several breakdowns, including any sexual activity with a child by an adult, sextortion, child pornography, trafficking, encouraging a child to watch adult porn, touching and non-touching abuse, etc. So the risk we take with hyper-focusing on one specific type of child sexual abuse is that it distorts the perception of what is really going on. So out of 525 child abuse cases in the 22nd Judicial district that was seen by Hope House in 2024, 30 were trafficking in cases. And I'd like for you all to keep in mind that the definition of child trafficking is very broad and not as tight as Hollywood may make it seem. And I think we have that understanding. But for example, if someone offers a minor a tangible object in exchange for a quote-unquote favor, that is trafficking and is classified as such. I am not opposed to a flyer of some sort in the counselor's office at a high school. I am opposed to making this policy as it is written, especially without consulting the professional opinions of the powers that be. So the mandate reporting law that is now in place is appropriate to address sexual child abuse. Children think like children and respond to trauma like children. Reading a poster in a school bathroom is not best according to the professionals that I have spoken to. So while it is very effective in airports and train stations and casinos, it may not be in particular our elementary schools. Data collection is not enough to write a policy this tight on this subject. Children should never be responsible to get themselves out of a situation because they read it on a poster. It's very confusing. Children are encouraged and always will be encouraged to report. We already have a child sexual abuse prevention education curriculum, and I think that's Mr. Morris, in place, delivered through our counseling department that is developmentally and age appropriate. I just encourage us to oppose this policy unless and until our mental health department in this school system, along with our assistant superintendent, and I'm happy to be on the committee, Michelle, with you, whatever it takes, has consulted professionally with a state and national accredited facility such as the Children's Advocacy Center Hope House to see if this is appropriate and especially at the younger age. I am concerned that this will instill more fear than it will be for your intention to do good and save children. And I would suggest that until we can get a committee together that I'm not saying not address it, I'm just saying until we get the minds of the professionals at the table that we reject this at this time.
Ms. Fauntleroy.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I wanted to say something similar. I don't have it written out as eloquently, but I do applaud the efforts to address any danger to our kids. So I'm not opposed to that. But just as someone who's worked in the system for so long, I think that rather than reinvent the wheel by making a poster or another way to address this, I think we already have several programs in place, even state mandates in place, that we could incorporate this into. I think they would probably be better, more effective, because they're administered in a small group setting, which always, to me, is better with kids when you're trying to address something that could scare them or is a danger to them. The ones that came to my mind off the top of my head were one that Gia just referred to, the Act 525 mandates, K-12, age-appropriate education. Let's see, it says requires child sex abuse prevention education for students. And it has to have two components. What constitutes abuse or assault? That has to be explained. And then also how to safely and confidentially report or seek help for this abuse. I was a guidance counselor a long time ago, and I was the one that had to implement these lessons at a K through 8 school. They were all different for every grade level, age appropriate. This act goes up to 12th grade. We always had increased reports after we did these lessons. We still do these lessons because my guidance counselor, I had to sign off that she had completed them. And they're done in a small group classroom setting, which is a safer environment for kids, and it's age appropriate. Another program that we have, it was iSafe when I was working. I think it's, hang on, I wrote it down. Common Sense Media now, Miss Inky Landry, our what is she? Instructional technology, informational, instructional. She oversees that, and it's administered usually by librarians, not always, but the lessons come from Common Sense Media. They are age appropriate. The lessons are designed to address internet safety issues. If there isn't a lesson in there already designed for this, I'm sure we could develop one to add to it. I think that would be a good way to implement it. And then Crime Stoppers is those presentations, for all of my years in education, they were tweaked every year to be appropriate to whatever the ongoing issue was. 20 years ago, the word fentanyl wasn't in the presentation. It is now. If this is a problem that we need to address, it can be addressed probably by talking with those people and having that added to their program. I just think we already have ways we can address this without making another page in our policy manual, without any added expense. I know the kids use Crime Stoppers. I know they listen. They will make calls to those, and they know that if they're in a dangerous situation, and they don't know what else to do, they call Crime Stoppers. They do. I've been woke, what's the right English term? Mr. Kosei woke me up at 3 a.m. to call parents when there was a problem, or 11 at night or whatever, if it was an immediate threat because a kid called and reported something they were concerned about. So I know we have programs that work. I would like to, I don't want to get ahead of anybody else who wants to speak, but when we finish speaking, I think we should just table it to a committee. I think if we want administrators to administer it, they need to be on the committee. We need our MHPs or guidance counselors on the committee. We just need input from the people that are going to be responsible for this. And if their suggestion isn't to incorporate it in these, then that's fine too. But I don't think we need to spend extra money and reinvent the wheel when we can incorporate it somewhere else. So I know Michelle wants to speak, and go ahead and I'll chime back in after you.
Ms. Gallagher.
I see what y'all are saying, and I just have a couple questions. So, if I'm not mistaken, you at the front desk can confirm, the class or the lesson that they have on internet safety and all that, it's once a year, correct? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I mean, they're ongoing lessons.
But I get a notice that comes home that says, on Monday, May 5th, your child in 8th grade will be getting whatever that.
Mandated sexual abuse lesson.
Right, but I only get it once a year.
Right, because they tell them to report it to the guidance counselor.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's a 10-month school year. Like, they only get it once. And I think that's the concern, is that if I get it at the beginning of the year, I might not have been paying attention because it's not happening to me right now. 6 months from now, I'm like, God, what was that program I watched? What is that? And then then you have to go talk to somebody that maybe you don't want to talk to them, but there is a number you could call. That's, wait a second.
Crime
Hold
Stoppers.
on a second, please, is another thing. Maybe they don't have the Crime Stoppers number. Oh, wait, just a second, Kalinda, if you don't mind. So I'm just saying, the flyer that you say is created, I'm assuming, that Hope House gave us, none of us got that flyer. Do we have a copy of that? I know one was that you said was like, yeah, this isn't it, but then they made another one.
This is not like a finished product. This was just something that Thomas was gracious enough to put together for us.
So he is a person in the field that has put input into this. So there are professionals that were consulted in this, to where but from Hope House, I mean, obviously he's a professional of some type. Do we, maybe our MHPs, I cannot speak for that if they were involved in this process, but to say that no professionals were involved in this at all is not accurate. Am I correct on that?
No, I don't think anybody said no.
Nobody said that.
After he made this poster, that is when Michelle started, and I started talking about also adding the internet safety to that. So this is not at all something that is finished, ready to go out. But if I can give my opinion, I think people like Thomas at Hope House, Brian Brown, can give us information and work in a committee, in a group, with some stakeholders to try to see how to do this, that it's age appropriate, that it's doing what we want it to do. So I'm not ready to say, oh, this is something we need to go put on walls right now. I do agree with Gia that I think it needs to be, we need to get more input from people so that we do wind up doing the right thing and not scaring kids or not upsetting parents that we have the word sex in a third grade bathroom. I just think we need more input from those professionals.
Right, and I do see what you're saying, and and I agree with Gia, there's like sex trafficking or sexual abuse, there's a wide variety of it. You can't just say internet safety is the only thing that's a sexual assault problem or whatever.
I went to the Hope House, they had a sex trafficking. Kim and I both went, and I had no idea what sex trafficking really is.
Right.
I had absolutely no idea. So that's why I think too, I think it would be a good idea if we had more of a conversation with Thomas, bringing Brian Brown in, bringing some stakeholders in. So if we're gonna do this, do it right.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing, but, no, and I do agree with you, but I wanted to say, that we already have these programs in place in our schools, it's once a year. It's not like it's this ongoing education of what to do if feel like you're sex trafficked or whatever, so just to say that we have these programs in place, it's a once a year, a 1 hour session of the 181 days you go to school, it's 1 hour of all those days. So maybe the programs we have are working a little bit, but I do think there's more that needs to be done in this because it's happening more and more and more, unfortunately, all around us.
Ms. Hurstis.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher, for mentioning that, because that's basically the reason for the flyer, is to make sure that we reach every child, because when they do go through the presentations, they're not going to remember, that 800 number or, NCMEC or, cybertipline.org and all the resources that I'd happen to, put in the policy. And in the policy, it doesn't just say sex trafficking. It says internet safety. Internet safety goes over, sextortion and all these other things. And so, when doing the flyer, all that can be, put in there. I am well aware of all the, different, things that are involved in that. And as far as, not putting it in younger schools, like elementary, children that are 6 years old are getting molested. So, yeah, we want to make it aware for younger children. And I'm not saying we're going to have a flyer with things on it that are going to scare a child. And as far as Crime Stoppers, the Crime Stoppers Crime Stoppers is really more geared towards suicide, drug use, bullying, violent incidents, and safety issues. That's pretty much what Crime Stoppers is all about, Ms. Fauntleroy. So I think if we maybe had, a little bit more, because I know you keep kind of shoving that down our throats, I think having something a little bit more geared towards, the sex issue, the internet safety issue, and things like that, that might be a little bit better for our children. Again, I'm not saying I'm doing the flyer and I'm going to just shove something on the wall. this is going to be professionals that are doing it. I didn't just pick somebody off the internet to do a flyer. We're working with Thomas with Hope House, a professional. Again, this is for children to possibly save their life. This is for safety. Think about that.
Ms. Fauntleroy?
Thank you. I'm not opposed to safety, and I certainly want to help every kid we can. I'm just saying that I don't think a poster is going to do it in a standalone situation, and I think we need a comprehensive plan to address it. I don't think, I am not opposed at all to a poster hanging. We have lots of posters that we hang in public places that inform of all kind of things. There are a lot of mandated posters that administrators have to check for already every year. Sexual harassment being one of them. So I'm not opposed to the flyer being a component of this. I don't think we need it in elementaries because honestly, 6-year-olds can't read that well. So I don't think it's going to be very beneficial. I don't think the bathroom is the appropriate place for it at any school. If you've ever been an administrator, that's going to have its own problems. And I think it's effective, like Gia said, in places where the perpetrator is going to have the child and that's their only safe spot to read the sign. That's not the case in school. So I think it needs to be, the flyer is not an issue for me. I just don't think it should stop there. And as far as Crime Stoppers, I don't think we need to muddy the water with 5 phone numbers on the back of the ID. And the other problem is our IDs are already purchased, right? And they're key fobs, right? Aren't our IDs what they swipe to get in the buildings,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so they're already, have we purchased those ahead of time for next year?
We have not,
Okay.
because the suicide prevention lines on
That's-
there.
that's a law.
Those numbers have
Right.
changed, so we had to put stickers on last year.
Okay,
We don't know what's coming out this session, so we're trying to wait as late as we can.
Okay.
But we're gonna have to order within the next month.
all right. Well, the number, I think kids, I have a problem, I call Crime Stoppers. I don't think Crime Stoppers would hang up on them if they said, I'm calling about sexual exploitation. I think they would put them in touch with the right person. But that's not a big deal either. I just think we can do better, and like Ms. Hart said, we need to get it right. We don't, if we can do better than just a poster, and we can incorporate it into programs that we are already doing as well.
I said this was a start, Kalinda.
But you
Ms.
made it a
Hurst,
policy, and the policy is written, and once a policy is voted on in that form, it has to be followed in that form. So we need to tweak the policy and get it right before we vote on it. And that's why I would like to move to table this. So I don't know if you want to table it till a certain time, or I like to make a motion to table this and have a committee formed to make a comprehensive plan for addressing it.
Is there a second to Kalinda's motion? I'll second it. Ms. McCollum, any comments from the public? No? No, that's called a question. Okay, everyone will know. Actually, we can, do we have board comment on board comments on tabling? No? Everyone please vote.
What are we voting on, tabling? Okay.
We are voting on tabling this item.
And send it to committee.
Okay, what we have up is consideration of the policy.
Oh, let me,
You did. So we are voting to table Michelle's policy, flyer policy, and send it to a committee that we would have to talk about after we vote on this. at a later date on how to form that committee, et cetera. The vote currently is to table, so you'd have to vote on that. You have to,
vote not to table it, it's just done.
then your vote would be no to table.
I understand it's no, but if it doesn't get tabled, then I get no policy at all.
If the motion to table fails, then we would go back to discussing it to pass as is, as you presented it.
Ms. Gallagher? I know. Okay.
And that motion passes with 11 yeas and 1 nay. Next, we have Ms. Hart with her administrative update.
Okay, I have a very short administrative update tonight. I knew it would be a long night. As Ms. Garcia said, we had Brian Brown did the parent nights on the west side and the east side with tips to keep children safe online. Those were well attended. We would have liked to have seen more attendance, but hopefully the word spreads. It was a good thing though, because the parents who came asked him, please come to our PTA meetings. And so I think, more people will be interested in having those at school. On April 27th, the District Handbook Committee met and finalized the recommendations that will be brought to the board in June. That's my update.
Do I have any questions from the board? All right. Next is a monthly maintenance and custodial report.
Monthly maintenance and custodial report are available, that's available on board docs, and Mr. Gottschall is here to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? All right, moving along. Ms. Tipton?
Thank you, Mrs. Martin. Our first item is recommendation for substantial completion of Fountainblue High School additions. That's St. Tammany Parish School Board Project number 1945. And that is subject to all regulatory requirements, approval of Superintendent Javia, and the architect's recommendations.
All right. Ms. McCollum is making that motion. Mr. Harold making the second. Public comments, questions from the board? Everyone vote. And that passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our construction report, our projects did stop work during the testing period, particularly where we're close to classroom areas. We now are getting back on site. We did have some weather delays here recently, but hopefully everything's going to move forward quickly and with good weather now. The contractor for the termite damage repairs at the gym locker rooms at St. Tammany Junior, they are planning the starting of the removal of the existing roof and roof structure and the installation of the new structure over the locker room area, probably starting first of next week. The Salmon High Female Sports Locker Room Concessions Building, they actually got their permanent power today. We've been waiting on CLECO, and they'll be able to start their final finishes in that building. The contractor for the project for Mandeville Junior Gym locker room renovation, they're removing slab areas where there are new plumbing lines to go and foundations for new structural steel members. That's on the girls' side. On the boys' side, they're already roughing in the underslab plumbing lines and planning on when they'll be pouring the concrete back. We've been planning for our upcoming summer projects, which will be starting very soon with the end of school year coming up. So we have quite a few jobs that we're already talking to our teams and making plans for how that'll come together. So we're very excited about the bond referendum passing, and we are appreciative of the voting public for the continued support to continue doing capital improvements. for our facilities, for our staff and students. With that bond referendum, you may be wondering how we proceed from here to get started on these projects. So I wanted to go over that process a little bit with you this evening. The first step is just to select design teams, architects, and the consultants that they work with. We advertise for requests for qualifications, and those architects and their teams that want to respond, they respond to that request for qualification forms and request for information that we put in that packet. We have evaluation criteria. They have points associated with them, and that provides the method that those are evaluated ultimately. So the evaluation occurs with a selection committee. That committee is appointed by the superintendent. In the past, it has included school board staff members as well as members of the public that are familiar with design and construction or have that as a background, but that don't do school board work, or they may be retired, but not affiliated with anybody that might be seeking work with the school system. So in the past, we have had quite a response to our RFQs for this process. It's a lot of effort on the part of the design teams that apply to us because they provide information that we have to go through for every single job. And in this case, there are 25 projects to be selected for. So the advertisement runs for 3 weeks, and you receive the submittals no less than 30 days later. So it will take a month once we have the RFQ advertised to receive those submittals back from the design teams. We'll then, as a staff, have to assimilate those into groups that go out to our committee members. They will have to spend time reading all of these responses, evaluating them with the evaluation points shown in the criteria, and then we will come together as a committee once that process is done, and we will each provide our evaluation grade, if you will, for each firm, for each project. And then there will be recommendations from that committee that will be brought to this board for y'all's consideration. That process usually takes about, from start to finish, our preparation of the RFQ, its advertisement, our receipt, the committee's time, the committee meeting, and then coming to the board is usually a 3 to 4 month sort of time frame from start to finish. We're in process of working on the RFQ to be able to advertise it and get it out. Our goal is to hopefully have responses back by early July, maybe late June. So that's our current, what we think we can meet schedule-wise to get started.
Thank you. Any questions, board members?
Just to be clear, when you send it out, it is for all the projects, all the 25 at once? So if you're sending me an invitation to qualify to bid, then I have to look at all 25 projects?
You can select what you want to apply for.
Okay.
Ms. Gallagher?
So is there a order of precedence of these projects? Like, I know there's a whole list, but how do we rank them in, like, North Shore's getting done first, though we're not on the list? Or who's taken priority over what? Is it the length of the project? Is it can we get done the quickest? Or how is that gonna work? Because I don't know I think it's been asked, but I don't know that there's been an answer of where do these projects rank in who gets priority to get done first?
So are you asking relative to the RFQ process?
No, to the bond. Like, you've got all your people in place of who's doing what. When do we decide what project goes first?
So we're going to focus on classrooms, removal of portables as the highest priority. I think I'm speaking, I know
Okay.
Superintendent Javi will speak up if not. But you also have to keep in mind just what you just pointed out, some jobs may be a little more streamlined, a little more obvious what needs to happen. The documents can maybe be put together a little more easily, a little quicker, and might be ready to go out for bid before something that is far more involved than, say, Pineview or Boyette, which are certainly very high on the priority list. But those are very large projects. They're going to be multiple phases. They're going to require modulars to be put in place, which is a whole project unto itself. So we will be focused on moving all of these jobs forward, focusing first on classrooms, if you will. But every job is unique. As you get more and more into the details of every job, it can go in different ways, and it takes a little longer. Maybe it goes a little quicker. We will make decisions about what goes out for bid when we have jobs ready to go out for bid. But we're going to focus, obviously, on the planning and getting them ready, all ready as quickly as they can be, to be as complete a scope as possible going out for bid.
And that's why we're trying to get, we're gonna have a priority list for those big projects. But like Cameron and I have spoken, I mean, there's big projects that are very involved setting up. And then, so let's say like a Boyette or Pineview, like you said, and then let me give you an example, like a Fifth Ward. There, we're getting rid of 2 special ed portables, and we're replacing those with 2 brick and mortar and extension. So there'll be very little impact to that campus to do that. So as soon as we want to get everything out as quickly as possible and address and having those people working on it. So when we're ready to move on a project and things move, we'll be prepared to start moving forward. Because the turnaround time, y'all, has been 5 to 6 years. That has been our complete turnaround of every project being complete. That's what we've done for the public, and that's why we've been able to come out with a capital improvement plan on the 13th, 2013, 2019, and now 2025. But we will come back to you as soon as possible with a list of high priorities that are gonna be our big projects, and then things that will have very little impact on a campus that might be something that can move pretty quickly.
Right, and I
So
agree with
yes.
what you said, like, right, boy,
Yes.
you're gonna have to put some modulars out there to get the kids out of the building before you tear the building down.
That's
Obviously, you
exactly
can't
right.
tear it down with them in the
Right,
building, right? So I get it. But like I said, I know people have asked, like, where do we prioritize those? So,
We're gonna
but
come
they
out.
need to know that they have to be in phases, so boy, that whole project's not getting done in a year, right? It's gonna
Right.
take a while.
Oh, yeah.
But the modulars are the top priority, or portables, should I say, to get, that is the top priority.
That is.
Okay.
That is. And we will let you know. We're gonna get you something to show exactly what we're looking at as our top priorities in big projects, and where we might be able to start with some smaller projects that have very little impact. Like the kids in the portables that, I'm just using Fifth Ward as an example.
Right.
They're in portables now. They would just stay there. And when this building's complete, they can move, and then we can tear that down. So there's things that have very little impact on a campus, whereas like a Mandeville's band room, it's gonna have a big impact on the campus, because we have to destroy their band, you know what I'm saying? It has to be completely redone. So there's just a whole lot that goes into those, so we're working on it.
Dr. Peterson.
Yeah, and this is all from the bond issue that we just passed.
Correct.
There are no other bond issues for capital improvements other than that one, is that correct? I mean, there's not more than one.
For us, Dr. Peterson, all we
Bond.
have is, we'll have our parish-wide projects that are normal projects of safety, security, general construction, maintenance, upgrades to different facilities that come up that are not capital improvement plans. But the bond issue will be the primary focus on major construction. Yes, sir.
We still have a few projects to wrap up, I think one on the 2019, and then we're gonna have money left over in that, then they'll come up with a plan, and they'll bring those projects to you that we can
Well,
use that
yeah.
excess money.
And I'm just so thankful to our superintendent and our community for pushing this bond issue through, because it's something that obviously we have some very serious buildings that need attention. But one day, and this is premature by any means and doesn't have anything to do with this today, we've got 2 high schools that do not have auditoriums for their kids. And I guess I got spoiled at North Shore High School in a fantastic state-of-the-art auditorium. And I think that Pearl River High School and Lake Shore are the 2 that don't have auditoriums now. And I hope that's somewhere down the road, but it's somewhere on that bond issue in the future, because these programs are going, and Fall River High in particular just had their senior play on the stage in the cafeteria with the chairs set up on the floor, and I just haven't seen that done in years. But that's how they're doing it at Pearl River. But anyway, just food for thought. Thank you.
All right, next we have from Ms. Prevost, her financial update.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick financial update, a couple of highlights. Everything's pretty much status quo at this point. Health insurance is looking really good. We had a meeting with the Health Insurance Committee today. Looks like we may end the year with a surplus, first time since 2007, so that's tremendous. Sales tax revenues are trending up. March sales tax was up $575,000 over last March, so that is a 4.57 increase, so that's very good news. We're up almost $2 million year-to-date over last year, so that will help offset the MFP we lost of $3 million. So if that continues to grow, hopefully that will zero out that MFP loss. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from board members? No? Okay. Monthly financial statements?
I provided the March financial statements to you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Board member questions? All right, monthly purchasing reports.
That report was provided to you, and Mr. Randolph is here to answer any questions about that report.
Board members? Ms. Baker?
How do you project, like, the tariffs busting our budget? Like,
can't.
I mean,
You can't. I mean, we know some things that, like furniture, I think they started those April 11th. But it's going to mainly impact next year. It's the same as the inflation that hit us. There was no way to know. You just do the best you can, and, you know, you're going to need to factor in some more.
so our budget goes from June,
July 1st to June 30th.
July to June 30th.
Right.
So when you're doing that, are you going to take into consideration as much as you can?
I'm not too concerned about the tariffs, because I think
Okay.
I think it's a political play personally. I think you're going to see them fall off, but
Okay.
we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, is that it? Okay. Staff, you may leave. It's public comment time, but we don't have anyone here. President Green, do you have any announcements?
Just that the May board meeting will be held on Thursday, May 15th at 6 PM.
Thank you. We'll wait just a couple of seconds.
And we have a new pope. Is he related to Miss Prevost? I don't know.
It has been all day long. I was getting texts, I didn't see the news, and they're like, are you, is that your, are you related to the Pope? I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. No, as far as I know. But he is from New Orleans area, so my husband has lots of relatives, it's a possibility.
He is American.
All right, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Ms. Gallagher?
Second.
Mr. Green?
Amanda? Technically, you asked for public.
I was, public? Public comment? No. Wait, guys, I need a vote to go into executive session.
Aye.
All right. We are now in executive session.
Y'all want to take a break 1 second?
Up to you.